Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, April 9th. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The Akron game in 144 days. The game against Michigan in 235 days. Okay, confession time. I got to tell you, 24 hours ago, I was not expecting to be leading today's show with Arkansas basketball, but here we are. What a time to be alive. John Calipari, maybe now officially former by the time you hear this, Kentucky basketball coach, reportedly heading for Arkansas. Why are we talking about this on this show? Well, report from Matt Norlander of CBS Sports on Sunday night said, quote, Calipari privately expressed significant/serious interest in the Ohio State job, but the timing wasn't right per source. So timing is always right to have Tony Gerdeman at BuckeyeHuddle.com on to talk about this kind of thing. Tony, this is a really fascinating one because I've seen people whose opinions I really respect on things talk about how this was a massive swing and a miss for Ohio State. I don't necessarily think I agree with that, but I'm interested. We haven't really talked about it, so maybe we're going to get to, hashtag embrace debate here today, or maybe not. But your thoughts on the possibility of John Calipari, potential, or at least formerly potential, Ohio State future basketball coach?
Well, you say that it was maybe a swing and a miss. I'm not even sure Ohio State was ever in the batter's box on this. Expressing interest privately is not the same as Ohio State declining to offer or not offering enough. So I think that all needs to be clarified more. And what kind of talks were there? Were these preliminary? And it's like, no, we're not going to be able to match that number. And so I would like to know exactly how close it got before I really, really get outraged. As it stands, Tom, we can be on a precipice of outrage or just discuss this in real terms.
I think let's start with the numbers here, because I feel like it's amateur athletics, Tony. We have to start with the money because that's what everyone starts with these days with amateur athletics. It is, to me, I think this whole conversation is driven by the money. Because Jeff Goodman from Field of 68, he has been really on top of a lot of the details here. You get the sense that probably a lot of this is getting leaked directly to him. So I guess the first question is the buyout. There was a report that, that the buyout was the sticking point for Ohio State. And then Goodman said if Kentucky had fired Calipari, it would have owed him more than $32 million. But if Calipari leaves for another job, he doesn't owe Kentucky anything. That's probably being leaked from Calipari's side based on the fact all the other stuff that he's got there on Calipari's contract that we'll get to in a minute. So maybe that's Calipari's spin. Maybe he'll owe Kentucky a buyout. But, as you were saying on the huddle board presented by Jeff Ruby Steakhouse at BuckeyeHuddle.com on Monday morning, with the way things had gone for Calipari at Kentucky in recent years, Kentucky might be very happy to just give him a Laurel and Hardy handshake and send him on his way.
Yeah, I think that was the case. I think if there was no $33 or $32 million owed on the contract, he probably would have been fired. And this is the same guy who has as many NCAA tournament wins over the last 4 years as Chris Holtmann. So when you put those two things together, it's like pretty disturbing or surprising. They both coaches have lost a first round game as the number 2 seed in the last 4 years. So there's some falling short there. And Kentucky just lost another first round game as a 3 seed this past season. So you look at the results these past few years, and Kentucky was not happy. And I think you just get to a point where it's like, it's better for all parties to just start new. Problem is, and not to be ageist, Tom, Calipari is 65 years old. He's always seemed like a young guy because he's always been like maybe just surrounded by young guys, with the recruiting the ones and dones. But looking back at his Wikipedia page like yesterday, and I had completely forgotten about his like 8 years at Memphis or whatever, because I remember from UMass way back 30 years ago, and then a stint in the NBA that didn't work out, I think with the Nets, and then it's just like he's been at Kentucky forever. I had completely forgotten about the Memphis thing, and so he's been around for a very long time, been incredibly successful, Hall of Famer, but 23-10 this past year, 22-12 the year before that. 9-16 in the COVID year. I don't know that you can really hold anybody the year after the COVID year. So I just, the results have been lackluster. I think he would have been a better hire, a more noteworthy hire than Jake Diebler. But I don't know that it was an option. And I don't know that he would have been a better hire, but for, at what cost and for how long. He's going to make apparently like $8 million at Arkansas. He's never getting that at Ohio State. The NIL aspect of it, they're talking about $5 million per year NIL. He's never getting that at Ohio State. Ryan Day is begging and pleading for $13 million a year for the football team. So the basketball team's not getting more than a third of that. And you're talking about Ohio State, who has done some very good things with the NIL, but they weren't able to hold on to a 13-point per game score in Roddy Gale. So just two different worlds, I think, in terms of the commitment or the resources. And it's been John Calipari, one of his good friends is John Tyson from the Tyson family chicken people. And, he's got plenty of money. They've got the Walmart money out there. So I think it's weird to say like, Ohio State just can't compete with Arkansas. I think in this situation, how much would Calipari have to say no to from Arkansas to say yes to Ohio State?
Yeah, and we can dive into those numbers in a minute, but I do think, and I'm going to be careful with my words here, but use my eyebrows to communicate what I'm saying. Tony, does it seem to you as if John Calipari's maybe fall off with the postseason results may have coincided neatly with the legalization of NIL across the sport of basketball, and maybe more players at more teams being able to monetize their name, image, and likeness in a way that maybe they couldn't legally before? Do you think there might be a correlation between those two things?
I think if you were to do math, maybe the math might add up. But with NIL being legalized in July of 2021, and that's when, so the first class would be like the 2022 recruiting class. Since NIL has been a thing, as I said before, Kentucky went 22-12 the first year, 23-10 the next year, lost in the first round this past year, lost in the second round the year before that. So, gosh, it's like everybody's now able to pay players, or players can get paid. So it sure seems coincidental or matter of fact, or the reason behind. I don't know. Whatever term you want to use, it is hinky. Is that another? Can we say it's hinky that this is happening?
This may be a correlation does not equal causation thing, and who knows? He may go to Arkansas and win the NCAA tournament next year. We'll see. The trend line there has certainly not been great. The postseason results have looked extremely Holtman-esque, which, the regular season results have been better, sure, but, and Chris Holtman was not getting Ohio State to the Sweet 16, even though after good regular seasons, people were saying, why can't you get to the Sweet 16? John Calipari's last Sweet 16 was in 2019, which is a hot minute back. So that's one thing. I think the money piece of this here is really the big thing, because we talked about the numbers, the Jeff Goodman report, $7.5 to $8 million a year. Ohio State just functionally, they're paying Jake Diebler $2.5 million a year. They're paying Chris Holtman $3.5 million a year. So, okay, let's say you can conjure $4 extra million a year out of thin air. I don't know what Ohio State's NIL budget is. It's certainly not anywhere in the neighborhood of $5 million a year for basketball. So we're just going to say it's $2.5 million a year just to make the math real easy here. So it's half of what Calipari is getting. Okay, so you're going to pull $2.5 million a year for NIL, and you're going to pull an extra $4 million a year for coach salary. Even if there's no buyout involved, that's $6.5 million. That's functionally half of the college additional basketball money. That's functionally half of what the football NIL number that sort of has been floating around there is. Feels like, Tony, to me, and I know there are people who are Ohio State basketball fans, even more so than Ohio State football fans. I know these people exist. I also have access to the traffic numbers on our articles and our YouTube videos. So I know the level of interest in Ohio State football versus Ohio State basketball broadly across the fan base. I have a sneaking suspicion that in the fourth quarter in Ann Arbor in November of 2015, if Ohio State and Michigan are tied, Ohio State fans are going to be much more concerned with whether Caleb Downs is out there on the field for Ohio State and Jeremiah Smith is out there on the field than who the Ohio State basketball coach is. I think I'm going to say 98% of Ohio State fans in that moment are going to be saying, I'm glad that these football players are here and are not thinking, I wonder who the Ohio State basketball coach is right now.
Yeah, or you sign you land a transfer guard from USC instead of a Caleb Downs, and it's like,
what would his name be?
Well, I was just threw a school out there. Anybody, it could be anybody, literally, and the vast majority of people won't care in terms of that guard or that center or whatever, because if the Ohio State defense is giving up a touchdown, it's like, if they knew that it could have been either this guy or this football person, if you put a poll on Twitter, you put a poll anywhere, you have Nielsen call up and ask people, Ohio State fans, would you rather have an All-American safety or an All-American shooting guard? What do you think those numbers are going to be? And it's going to be lopsided in terms of the Ohio State football program. And so that's where the things have to be allocated. Now, at Arkansas, I think Calipari should do just fine at Arkansas. I think it's going to be interesting to watch him change his thing in terms of the one and done stuff, because that's not been as effective. He's not been to the Final Four since 2015. I don't know if people realize that. It's been a hotter minute, Tom, than just the Sweet 16. But with that, reported $5 million a year NIL package thing, I could see them, instead of going one and done, it's going to be a different type of one and done. It's going to be the guys with the veterans with 1 year left that have, are 15 point a game scorers at Ohio State or Kentucky. And they want to go and kind of build these maybe super teams of veterans. And you're not just relying on youth, which leads to early exits in the NCAA tournament. So I think it'll be interesting to see how they develop that. But the money aspect is just, I think Arkansas is sort of better equipped because they don't have to worry about football as much. They don't have to keep 10 NFL draft picks from leaving for the NFL in football. So they can kind of do different things with their NIL stuff. Whereas if you let JT Tuimoloau go so that you can keep Roddy Gale, I mean, I don't think that's a winning proposition for what Ohio State wants to do.
And I think, Ohio State football is not going to turn into Arkansas football if they decided to spend this kind of money on basketball. But if Ohio State football took one step back towards being Arkansas football, I think people would have a Chernobyl level meltdown over that. And, that would look like a 9-3 season. They don't have to go 7-5. If they went 9-3, Katie bar the door on what the fan base mood would be like in that moment. So, it feels like this is just a great a great object lesson in the fact that there is not an unlimited amount of money and you can only spend it one time. And unless you have someone who is going to come in off the sidelines, who has no interest in football and is only going to support basketball and has a huge checkbook to write a $10 million year check, or even a $6 million a year check, it's going to come at the expense of something else, and that something else is probably football. And I know what Ohio State fans are saying right now about John Calipari. We also know what you guys actually are watching and talking about and reading about and all that kind of stuff. And it is football, 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 basketball, and back to football. So and Tony, I guess finally my last question on this is, I had a phrase in my mind when I looked at Calipari's recent results, and I looked at, hey, getting out of town and going somewhere, and now you're the conquering hero again in the new place. Tony, I'm just going to say the phrase basketball Jimbo and ask you to react to that.
There is some of that, the Jimbo Fisher leaving and going to Texas A&M as as you said, a conquering hero, and then eventually that not working out there. Again, he has to adapt, and I think he'll have the freedom to do that. But now there's also going to be a ton of pressure. Now, Arkansas is not just some podunk. I mean, they've been a college basketball power for a long time, but it ebbs and flows. And I think, there are people there that are used to being one of the top programs in the nation. And so they now will expect to be there. And if you're not, then all the chicken in the world, Tom, won't keep you safe at night, as the saying goes.
As the saying goes. If you've heard it once, you've heard it a million times. All the chicken in the world won't keep you safe. So there you go. A show we didn't expect to be starting, followed by ending with a phrase we didn't expect to be coining. Look for it on T-shirts around all over Central Ohio very soon. So thank you guys all for joining us. We'll be back to football on tomorrow's show, I'm pretty sure, unless something else crazy happens. But counting down the days till the Ohio State spring game on Saturday. Forecast looks really nice for Saturday. Last time I think it was 65 and sunny on Saturday for the spring game. Kickoff at noon, TV on Fox. We will be there covering it all at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Should have all sorts of pre- and post-game coverage, as well as all sorts of coverage of the game and all the fun things we get to learn, all for you at BuckeyeHuddle.com and at YouTube.com/BuckeyeHuddle. That'll do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.